The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Well, this week, another election, right? Another week, another election here in Nevada, although that will be changing soon. New look on the Las Vegas City Council, a new look in Boulder City. I think just general thoughts on the municipal election.
Yeah, I think there were some surprises and some not surprises. I think the Boulder City elections were surprising for me, but it's good to see difference both in Boulder City and here in the Las Vegas City Council. We have a different makeup. You have Olivia Diaz making history in her district, and that was great to see. I mean, that whole district's race has a long and storied history, so I think people are happy on how that turned out and someone that can represent their district. And seeing Victoria Seaman win obviously was a little bit of a heartbreak, but we'll see how things go. I think it's going to be an interesting city council, and I think more people are paying attention to it little by little.
Half of the wards are represented now by former state assembly members, Fiore, Seaman, and Diaz. So interesting makeup of the Las Vegas City Council. What are your thoughts as to how it looks moving forward?
Well, I think that Victoria Seaman's ascension to the City Council, it was one of the most positive things that could have happened in this entire election. So I'm very, very happy about it. I think she'll be great for the city of Las Vegas. I think she'll be great for trying to resolve this ridiculous issue that's going on about the Badlands Golf Course, when the owner of Badlands has had an absolute legal right to be able to develop that for years. And the fact that the city of Las Vegas has now spent nearly $1 million battling him, and then there's more down the pike, they say, to battle or have to pay for it. So I don't know who's going to pay for it. Well, I do. I mean, the people who live in Las Vegas proper are going to have to pay for it one way or the other. So I hope with Victoria in there leading the charge, and I hope Diaz, I hope all of them get behind her and they erase what has gone on. Let's move forward and let the developers develop the Badlands and do it in conjunction with the people who live there and everything. But they've got to develop that. That's essential. So I think that election was very, very interesting. Diaz won by a small margin. Victoria ran away with it. I mean, so her popularity in her district, her ward, much more significant. Boulder City, I mean, you know, they've been cleaning house for a couple of years, and I think maybe they're embarrassed by what has been going on down there, and I think they're trying to change the makeup of Boulder City, and more power to them. North Las Vegas, you had Cecchio reelected in the city council. Nothing remarkable at that point. The big point I think we all agree on, and I'm happy about it, is the fact that we're going to have hopefully, you know, now it looks like all elections on even years. They had less than 10% turnout. Mm-hmm. I mean, how much money did they spend for this ridiculous election on that level? So that has got to change. It will change, and I think we all agree on it. So
the exception we see, interesting enough, we talk about Boulder City. The turnout's always high out there. People go to vote, and it was like 46%. I mean, that probably brought some of the county average up, actually, but it's that idea that people wanted to change in leadership as well. You termed it as cleaning house out there, and that's essentially what has happened the last 2 cycles. It is a completely different council than before the election in 2017. Yeah,
and I absolutely agree that the motivation to clean house and have new leadership and a new wave and new blood in there is what usually will drive higher turnout in lower turnout historical races. And like you mentioned, I think we can all agree, regardless of party, et cetera, that local races are some of the most important races, and those offices do have a lot of impact on people's everyday lives. And to see the low turnout historically, usually in Clark County, is upsetting, or Las Vegas is upsetting. And I think that's why it's going to be a good thing that we just have everything in one year. I mean, you have people, I have people that I know that usually during these races they say, there's another election, who do I vote for, what's going on? And it's just good to have it all streamlined all at once.
There's some people, by the way, have said from the beginning, well, if you have the election all together, that the people all the way down at the bottom of the election, like city council, people aren't going to pay attention to it, that's going to get lost in the shuffle. The truth is, maybe that'll happen in a few cases. I mean, few people might go, I don't want to go down there. But the bottom line is, more people, we all know, do come out for general elections. And that being given the fact, I think more people will be voting for the local issues as well, the city council races and whatnot. So we agree. This is a very positive, way overdue step.
And I think it's just by way of perspective, a little opinion here. You know, I came from a small town, so it's interesting when you talk about the local issues touching local people. You kind of forget, we get lost in the big issues of Badlands, whatever, Las Vegas and North Las Vegas, the big cities we have here. Hey, in Boulder City, the things voters were talking about, it was a bond for a new pool, essentially aquatic center, and utility rates staying low, and talking about growth. Those issues matter to people. It kind of resets it. We forget about that sometimes. Correct. So it's kind of an interesting thing from the big side of the valley as we look out toward the fringes. Monmouth we saw the first polling here for Nevada this week, and Biden has a big lead in the state, so he's the early front runner. I don't think there's much surprise there among likely caucus goers is who they had looked at. Do you think that's reflective of the gap we're seeing at the national level? Is the gap closing on Biden? What are you looking at as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I think so, and I think as per usual, the caucuses on the Democratic side are going to be interesting, to say the least, especially with Biden, because I think you're seeing with recent issues around the Hyde Amendment, it's going to be a battle for, I think, the heart of the party, and who, you know, you have varying sides. You had them in 2016, and I think a lot of people are still going to be on Bernie's side. He's still pretty high up there, at least in Nevada, and I think it's going to, now you're seeing that it's coming down to about 4 or 5 people that are really going to be the ones that Nevadans are going to be talking about.
And I think it's fair to point out, I mean, by the time we have the caucus here in 2020, in February, it's not going to be 23 candidates in the race. It'll be those folks on the upper end. That being said, how do you see those front runners, so to speak, that group shifting around in that order?
I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case. It could be 36 people by next February, the way things are going. We don't know exactly. You know, I think that this state is right now an anomaly. The polling in this state is an anomaly. I think it's behind what the rest of the country is experiencing, because if you look at the national polls on Biden, he's gone down. Yes, when he gave his announcement that he was running, he went up, he shot up, and then he shot his mouth off, and his foot went into his mouth. Every time he opens his mouth, the foot goes further and further down his throat until I think he's ready to choke. First he was for the Hyde Amendment, and then he was against it. And then he was, he was for telling us that China was no big deal, it's not competitive, it's not a threat. All of a sudden, now it is a threat, and they are competitive. And every time he opens his mouth, I think he wakes up every morning going, so what's the rest of the field saying? What are the other 22, 23 candidates, what are they saying? And then I'll have to adjust to that. The new progressive, extreme left-wing Democrat Party is driving the agenda for the Democrats. And with all respect, or due respect, you know, Biden is from the old guard. And the old guard meant people like John F. Kennedy and Henry Scoop Jackson, Joe Lieberman, people like that, who were definitely moderate. The modern Democratic Party today is not moderate. It is extreme left-wing, bordering on complete, absolute, total socialism. And I think that they're making a huge mistake. They're cutting their own throat. Republicans found this out, you know, when the Tea Party came out big time strong in 2009, right after Obama became a president, thinking that, I mean, I was part of that effort, going, oh, we're gonna take over the party is going to be all Tea Party. Republican Party is going to be all Tea Party. Well, it wasn't the case. That wasn't the case at all. And so I think that the Democrats are making a huge mistake by going to the left, by these young millennials coming aboard, going, everything's free. And the old guy, Bernie, going, everything's free. I mean, you know, they're all doing that. Biden, I think, is going to be dropping out long before the caucuses ever appear.
There's your hot take that it's going to be Bernie or Joe Biden dropping out quickly. To the point of like Hyde Amendment and other issues where we've seen Biden change, his supporters would say, well, it's okay to evolve over time on an issue. It's an evolution. Is that the case here? Do you buy that argument in Joe Biden's case that that's what's going on?
With the Hyde Amendment, for me, it's hard to see that quote-unquote evolution. I really do think, like you said, that it was just him realizing that that's not what the field is saying, that that's not how you're going to get people to vote for you in the primary, at least. And so, honestly, frankly, I think he should have just been smart and kept his mouth shut, like you're saying. I mean, we all know Biden. Many people can love him, but you can still agree that sometimes he says things that, then he regrets and that aren't good. And so, yeah, with the Hyde Amendment, no, it was something that was, I think, him trying to get to the middle or appease to some Republicans, thinking that he was in the general, but he realized that that's not how you get through the primary, and so he just went back.
I think he would have had a much better chance of going all the way had he not flip-flopped on all these issues.
Yep.
If he had stayed in the Kennedy, Scoop Jackson, Truman, Lieberman, and that party, and reinforced it and made no apologies and said, this is where I'm coming from, I stand by it, I believe these are the right positions to take, I think that he would have had a much greater chance of becoming the party's nominee. And now with him flip-flopping every 2 seconds, he doesn't see it, but the national polls show, in contrast to Nevada, national polls show that he's a sinking ship.
In Nevada, we've seen changes to the voting laws. Same-day registration is one of them. That's something where I think we've seen a difference, obviously, between Republicans and Democrats. How are you seeing that the 2020 election, the next election that we'll see under these changes, how will the election itself be changed? Do you think there's validity to some of the concerns that are raised by the other side?
Sorry, I was about to cough.
Okay.
It is something that in 2020, I'm glad to see it. We were a part of making sure people knew what was going on in the legislature, specifically with Speaker's omnibus bill and the various other voting rights bills that we saw. And I think it's that including with what we talked about earlier, that we're gonna have now local elections, it's going to make elections every single year a lot more important, because you're going to have everything from the top to the bottom on the ballot. And as far as the concerns, there were concerns throughout the process from county clerks and from different election officials, but they were part of the process, and they were, at the end of the day, you came to this compromise that is in all of these bills. And I think they're going to be able, we have some of the best county clerks in the country. Our Secretary of State has done a great job, and I think they'll be able to pull through at the end. And honestly, that's why we were able to pass this, because they were part of the process, and those concerns were met with and dealt with.
The lone constitutional officer, who is a Republican, by the way, is Barbara Sagafsky, the Secretary of State. Restoration of voting rights for felons, same-day registration, some of these issues. The concerns that you're expressing, do you think the compromises that were made address those concerns?
No, I think it was controlled by the Democrats in the legislature and the Democrat governor, and they shoved it through. And I think they made a huge mistake. Barbara Sagafsky already said it's going to cost a lot more money to be able to monitor these elections, and I think it is. You're going to have a lot more challenges to elections now because of people voting who probably should not be voting. It's going to be a lot easier for people to get voter registration and ballots who are not citizens, legal or illegal. It doesn't matter, but they're not even citizens, and I think that's going to be a huge problem. And I think it was a huge mistake that they made. But again, I think the idea was that they thought it was going to bring out more people to vote on the Democrat side. And they're probably right. It probably will. In terms of felons, no, felons' rights should not have been restored as soon as they left prison. That was another pandering idea to people in prison, going, you're going to get out, well, we're going to let you vote for us, and then we're going to give you whatever you want. And what happened with that concept is, again, what happens in the Democrat Party over and over and over again. You started out with this idea of, well, as soon as they get out, let's restore their rights. And then you have crazy Meshuggah Bernie Sanders out there yelling and screaming, no, they should be voting while they're in prison. Sure, they may have been blown up, the Boston bomber may have blown up a lot of people and killed people, and people may have murdered and raped and pillaged, but it's okay. let them vote anyway. So I mean, this is where he was coming from. And there are people who agree with him on the left. I mean, amazingly so, who agree. Let people vote in prison. Amazing. So again, parties move so far to the left that they don't see what the obvious consequences are as a result of things they pass. They're, as the cliche goes, they don't look before they leap. They're just going ahead and doing it. And then when the stuff hits the fan, they're going to go, well, we didn't see that. Let's modify it. Huge mistake, huge mistake.
What do you think of the Republican thought also that this is, talking about redistricting in 2020, a way to try to game the system in their favor to make sure they can get redistricting? That's something that you start to hear rumblings from on the Republican side as well.
Yeah.
A power grab.
Yeah, you heard it throughout the entire process, and honestly, Republicans are ones to talk about power grabbing when you're talking about redistricting. I think we can all agree that when we're talking about redistricting, we need to have a fair process to make sure that people are being counted accurately. And honestly, that's what a lot of these bills were. You have a bill where if you are in prison, you're not going to be counted at the prison that you're at, but instead where your family lives and what you will eventually go back to. And I think that it's not a power grab, especially going back to the issue of restoration of rights. I don't agree that you should vote while you're in prison, and that's not what the intention of this was at all. The intention of this was, if you come out and you're reintroducing yourself back into society after you have served your time, you have come out, you have served your parole, you've gone through the entire process, and you're trying to be a productive citizen, why not have that right back? I mean, it's something that, honestly, we saw a lot of bipartisan support on that. A lot of people that realized it's not right. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be the Boston bomber. I mean, I highly doubt he'll ever come out again. But it's about the people that are coming back. It's about the people that are going to be back into our society. Why not have them be a full participant in our society again?
Wouldn't the argument then hold true for you as well? Democrats say, well, Republicans gamed the system when they had control and gerrymandered the heck out of some of these districts. I would imagine Republicans would feel the same way about Democrats, that it wouldn't be a fair process, that Democrats would just do the same thing back if that's what happened. I
think that what Republicans have to do is not only think in terms of trying to get as many votes as they can for Donald Trump, which I know a lot of Republicans are going, yeah, we got to get Donald Trump elected, from the state. Okay, that's great. I mean, listen, I'll vote for Trump. I'm supporting him re-election. That's great. The problem is that it's a purple/blue state right now. And what we've got to do as Republicans is make sure that we do concentrate a lot on local elections. We're not going to retake, I don't think, the Assembly or the State Senate. But what Republicans have to do is get a good, fair number in there. So when they do sit down to redo the census, at least then it's a true concept from both sides, as opposed to just Democrats or just Republicans. Republicans better concentrate on some of those races that they go, well, we can't do it in this district, well, let's just give up on this. I mean, that is going to hand it to the Democrats big time, and I think that's wrong. It was Bernie Sanders that was suggesting about the Boston bomber, by the way, being able to vote inside prison. The idea of allowing somebody to regain their rights is fine with me, but the reason that they slowly reintegrate into society on parole is because they go through a parole officer who monitors to see if they've really changed and rehabbed, or whether it's just been, I'm serving time, but I'm still the same old, son of a gun that I was before. So, what they should do, restoring rights after a couple of years or whatever it happened to be, I was not opposed to that. But right away, as soon as they get out of prison, again, I think it was pandering.
Let's talk about an issue that affects us in Clark County specific issue, and it's having to do with closing the budget gap and to give the teacher raises and the health care increases, do all the things that the governor had promised, plus what the school district wanted to do. It came down to about $17 million for this year that needed to be closed. And with a cut of 170 deans that came down quickly, will also be about $17 million next year as well as a result with the cost savings. But just your thoughts on the strategy of doing that and how it kind of came together.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about this. As someone, it's upsetting to see that they're cutting the deans. A lot of people are talking about how, deans really do serve an important purpose. I know I enjoyed a lot of the deans that I had. Not only were they doing their job, but they were mentoring students because sometimes teachers just couldn't. They had the ability to do that. And they really were mentors and sort of community mentors for the school's community. And it's upsetting to see that now being cut. And I think also what's troubling is the process. The fact that it was just done kind of just out of nowhere. People really didn't see it coming. And now the effects are that now you have that gap of who's going to take this on. And I know that there have been talkings about who's going to take that on, but I think you're going to have to see a lot of now teachers are going to be upset that maybe they have to take on some of the responsibility, even though it's been said that it won't happen. But in reality, we know how sometimes it happens at jobs, is that once something is cut, a position is cut, everyone else that stays on has to take on that weight. And that's not going to be good for the people that are still trying to do the work in our schools.
All right, Marie Teresa, wait, that sounds just like you when we were talking a short time ago. Hold on, wait, Alan or Marie Teresa, I'm not sure. That sounds like a lot of what you believe as well.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to absolutely throw a greater burden on counselors, administrators, and teachers. They can say no, but that's a lie. They've been saying things all along. First of all, let me just say, we need an audit of the Clark County School District. We have all been agreeing to that and saying that liberal, conservative, Democrat, and Republican for years, and why the governor and the attorney general and those are not taking those steps to get an audit of the Clark County School District, which I'm questioning what's been going on with it from the beginning is amazing. Two, I absolutely believe that there was no real communication that went on between Jesus Jara and Steve Sisolak, their people, at all during most of the legislative process. So how do you wind up with the governor saying 3% raise, making all the other promises, we're not going to raise taxes, and then Jara saying, but we need more money, we're going to cut to the bone, we can't do it, and now at the last minute, what does he say? He's going to cut 170 deans. Let me tell you, those deans are an important position. They're going to put them in teaching positions or offer that to them at a reduced salary. So what you will have more teachers out there. If they have the classrooms available, you have more teachers out there, which means other kids from other classes will be able to join them. So you will have a reduced classroom size, as some people have been asking for, more teachers. But on the other hand, it's going to, and everybody's been saying that, even the unions, I'm agreeing with them on this, because what they're doing is they're saying it's going to present a greater security threat to the schools. And it's going to do that. Yes, they're going to hire a couple more canine dogs with the money, and they're going to hire another cop or two for a campus here and there. Okay, meanwhile, the schools that were built a long time ago still have multiple entrances. They're still not making them any safer. They should have been doing this for years. I've been harping about this all year long. They're not doing it. Schools are still not going to be safer in August, September when they reopen. And if your kids are going to a public school in Clark County School District starting this fall, you ought to be hopping mad about what's going on, and you ought to be letting everyone know about just how mad you are. If I had children, they would be going to private schools away from the public schools. They don't deserve to have kids in there right now. There are big problems. This dumping of 170 deans precipitously without letting anybody else know, with no communication between anybody else, has earned Jesus Jara the first in its entire history, a vote of no confidence by this local teachers union. A vote of no confidence from this guy. He has completely blown any capital that he had in the Clark County area. I have no kids in the public school, but if I did, I would be bringing lawsuits right now, and I guarantee you there will be lawsuits brought about.
What would that affect then? So the administrators union came out, and the 72 or however many principals that voted in that unanimously made that vote. Of course, that was to be expected. They weren't happy about what happened, but does that affect any sort of change? Is that just symbolic? What does that do?
I think you will see that change. I think you're going to see a lot more sort of infighting between the different unions that make up from your support staff unions to your teacher unions to your administrator unions. I think this is going to be a uniting factor for all of them that serve different purpose in our schools to actually go against the school district. I think the school district has sort of enjoyed seeing the different unions fighting amongst each other, but I think this last move has proved to them that now we are here to pick up the pieces, and now whether it's grievances at the local level or different contract fights or negotiations, it's going to be a lot harder, and I think the district is going to be in for a fight because the union, overall the unions are just not happy, and I don't blame them. I mean, this is something that now our secretaries, our teachers, our support staff, even our cafeteria workers, the dean is an important, it's sort of the institutional memory for safety in the school, and that is going to be something they all have to pick up now.
Oddly enough, and perhaps ironically, the Clark County Education Association, the CCEA, is like, well, that's not my problem, kind of hands off, more or less. It's, hey, it doesn't affect the classroom, so I'm not too worried about it. So they're the odd ones out, per se, in this situation.
Hands off, yes. But is there anyone, and if there is, I mean, I've been following this thing, is there anyone or any group that's supporting Jesus Jara in this move? Anyone you can name? I mean, enlighten me, because I haven't heard one person or one organization come out and say, we're behind you on this. You're right. The unification that's going on is in opposition to what he's doing. And again, this is not a liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican issue. This is a matter of being able to get safety for our kids in the school. And while they still have not done enough, and even if they kept all the deans, it wouldn't be enough, this is only adding fuel to the fire. And that's the last thing they need to do. They confiscated 17, 18 guns the last year on the campuses, and they say, well, we got them. No, how many did you not get? That we actually went through, the kids brought, they didn't get. The safety and security is not sufficient. And to dump these 170 deans is unconscionable. And people have got to be ticked off about this. And I'm telling you, there will be a lawsuit. And they should be. Either that or you're going to wait till it's a tragedy. And then you're going to wind up with lawsuits up the wazoo. And I'm watching to see what happens.
Well, let's leave it there for this week. Both of you, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.